Okay, I've been so lucky today to speak with and interview Dr. Lowell Katz. He was the Louisville Mascot from 1966 to 1970. He's been great and extremely patient. You're a very sweet man, sir, and I appreciate your patience. And what's really great is he's got this great, the head here that's the original, part of the original outfit. And how I kind of come across Dr. Katz almost accidentally, I was doing some research for All Things DeVille, looking for some information about the Louisville Mascot. You'd be shocked to know there's really not very much out there. And I kind of got lucky and called his old office and bumped into the right person with the information. I appreciate you taking the time to talk to me today, sir.
Sure.
So how did you end up becoming the Cardinal Bird anyway? How did you get into that?
Right around Christmas of 1966, my fraternity brother Murray Klein, who was the bird, was going back home to New Jersey for vacation, and U of L had 2 or 3 games over the break, and I asked him if I could do it, and he said, I don't want to do it anymore. So I started doing it, and after about a month or so, someone came up to me and said, "You're not Murray, are you?" I said, "Nope." So I started doing it.
That's awesome. That's awesome. I mean, it takes real personality to do that. Is it true that, I don't know where I read this, I think I've asked you this before, but is it true that the mascot is supposed to stay anonymous until the tenure is over?
Not at U of L.
Not at U of L?
No.
Maybe it's just someplace else where I've read that at. I mean, I guess, would you wear the thing like on the way to the game? Would you get weird looks at places?
The first year I changed in the locker room with the team. And there was a football helmet inside of the head, and it had a strap that went to your belt. You strapped it on so the head wouldn't fall off. I didn't like it, so starting the next year, I got rid of all that kind of stuff. And there's a little helmet here. Well, it's not there anymore. I guess I took that off. I started putting on the outfit at my fraternity house, and my best friend would drive me to the game. We would always go through the parking booth at Freedom Hall, and he would slow down and say, "Cardinal Bird," and
roll through. That's funny. Do you have any favorite moments or a game that you remember? I know that you've mentioned a couple to me in the past, but what are some of your favorite moments?
Well, we were playing Bradley, which was at that time with Cincinnati and Drake, the biggest rivalry we had. And we were leading by about 20 points, and the referee made a call that I was not in agreement with, and I raised up my head and called him a blind son of a bitch. And he came over and said that if I said one more word, he would throw me out of the game and call a technical.
Oh,
so
wow.
I didn't want that to happen. I've never been happy or felt safe with a 20-point lead during any U of L game in my life.
Oh yeah, that's been, we had a couple moments with that.
Yeah.
Then you tell me something about the Cincinnati Bearcat, and you had the cane back then or something.
Well, first of all, in 1958, my cousins came in from Cincinnati and took me to my first U of L game. I saw the Cincinnati Bearcats and U of L play, and I got to see Oscar Robertson, who I still think is the greatest basketball player of all time.
The Big O.
The Big O. I think the best overall player. I mean, you can't really disregard Will Chamberlain, or especially the late Bill Russell, who was just there.
Recently passed.
Yeah, and of course there were others like Michael Jordan and
LeBron and yeah, some of those guys.
Yeah, but still, I just thought Oscar Robertson was really great. We had one game very early in my career as the Bird that we were playing Cincinnati at Freedom Hall, and I had a cane that was part of my outfit, and I went and started to beat the Bearcat on the behind, and because I thought that's what you should do. I was really the first Cardinal Bird to do stuff out on the floor. Before me, they just kind of stood around.
Really? Okay.
Yeah, I used to run up to the fans in the first few rows when they were just sitting on their hands and not doing anything. You know, I'd grab them and pull them up and saying, "You're paying a lot of money for these seats. stand up and cheer.
Yeah, get invested.
Yeah.
I mean, but something I never could quite figure out. I mean, how did you convey emotion or excitement? I guess you would have to run through the crowd and do things like that.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
In those days, they only drew about 7,000 per game. A game like Cincinnati or Bradley would draw 13, 14,000.
Mm-hmm.
But you didn't have crowds like you had in the 80s and since then.
Mm-hmm. So that was not in Freedom Hall. Where were they playing at then?
Freedom Hall.
Oh, at Freedom Hall.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. All right, that's very cool. All right. So did you like the basket? Because you did football games also. Did
Yes.
you like the basketball or the football games better?
Oh, basketball.
Mm-hmm.
Football, the team wasn't very good. It was cold.
Mm-hmm.
It seems like it was colder and snowier in those days.
Hmm.
So it was not fun. I used to have to put on 2 or 3 sweaters to keep warm. Just
Yes.
and you can't see anything down there on the
Right.
floor. One day, a running back came running toward us, and I didn't have any depth perception. I could only see out of one eye, but I saw him coming, and I ran over to the other side, and the poor cheerleaders.
They took it.
They took the brunt. Yes.
Yeah. They took the brunt of it.
Yeah.
I think you told me once you'd met Lee Corso also, of course, right?
Oh.
He was the coach then. I heard he was a great guy.
He was a great guy. He actually asked the cheerleaders and the Birds to come with us on the team plane to a game at Kent State. And we got to meet all the players, and we had a steak dinner.
Mm-hmm.
And as we were landing at the Canton Akron Airport, he pointed out all these great football schools and started to list all the great players who had
Mm-hmm.
played there. That area is really a true hotbed of football.
Very good, very good. And I understand that you got to meet, don't really know much about him, I haven't read a lot about him, but Coach John Dromo. Could you tell me a little bit about him?
Well, Peck Hickman was the coach until 1967. And then John Dromo, who was his top assistant and who recruited Wesley Unseld and Butch Beard, was the coach for 4 years until he had a major heart attack and had to quit.
Mm-hmm.
And that's when they got Denny Crum. But John Dromo actually still holds the record for the best winning percentage of any basketball coach at U of L.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
The highest winning percent, better than,
Yes.
say, Denny Crum or...
Anybody.
Really?
He was really a very nice man. The women loved him. I think he had 5 marriages, which probably accounts for dying of a heart attack.
that might be it. How did you end up with did you abscond with it when you left the job, or how did you end up with the Cardinal Bird head anyway?
Another couple who we knew at U of L had their children at the same school that ours went to, and we were talking to them one day, and they were talking about how they had the head, and so my wife said, "Oh, Lowell would love that," and they said, "Well, you can't have it. We have a tradition in the family that every game day we put it on top of the mailbox."
Mm-hmm.
So a few years later, they called up and said, "Do you want it?" And we said, "Oh, great." So they brought it over. It was in terrible shape. This is paper mache,
Mm-hmm.
and it's not supposed to sit out in the rain and the snow and the cold. So we took it to an artist who had given art lessons to our children, and she completely redid it. It doesn't look exactly like it did, but it's
pretty close.
It's
Yeah,
pretty close.
the beak is a little different,
Yeah.
but it looks pretty close, and that
Yeah.
is the original head. So that's fantastic. So
And
that was
we-
nice of them to finally, I guess, hand it over to you
Yeah.
for safekeeping.
And the nice thing is, on the inside, you have the names and years of a lot of the birds, going back to the
Let's see, there's Al Poland
Al
right there,
Poland.
Lloyd.
Lloyd.
There's
me,
you right
there's
there.
me,
Uh-huh.
Let's see.
Craig Dalton, I
I think
guess.
so. Maury Kahn is in there. Yeah. Well, there's a lot of, and it still smells like it did with all the sweat. That never goes away.
Mm-hmm.
But it's historic sweat.
It's historic sweat,
Yes.
meant to be. Was there ever any downside to being a Cardinal Bird?
Well, I remember that game at Kent State. It was cold, and it was raining and snowing, and the mascot for Kent State wore these gigantic snowshoes. And he would come over and splash me with the snowshoes, and it was bad enough that the weather was bad,
Mm-hmm.
but we were getting killed. I think we lost 35-6 or something like that.
Man.
Just, I would never do that to another.
He's throwing salt in the wound.
Yeah.
That's a shame. That's a shame. Well, all right. Let me ask you this, and don't be modest. Do you think you were the best mascot University of Louisville ever had?
No. I
Okay.
think there were some in the 80s and 90s who were probably the best because it got to be a much bigger deal. Aaron Flaker was really outstanding. He did it, I think, for 4 years also. And I think he started a business of mascots. But Aaron was really, really good.
Okay. And so you're a retired doctor here in town, I assume. And do you have any other memories you'd like to share, or anything else you'd like to share about yourself, Dr. Katz?
Well, I think I told you earlier that I've been a U of L fan since that game against UC, and I used to listen to the basketball games on Wave Radio, and Uncle Ed Calais was doing the play-by-play.
Oh, that goes way back.
Wave had a weak signal. I think they still do. And in order to listen to the games at night, I had to put my hand on the radio and act as an antenna. So you can call me the human antenna.
A true fan, a true fan.
Yes.
Oh, man. Well, Dr. Katz, I know we've had to do this twice because I made a mistake in the past there the last time, so I appreciate your patience, sir.
Sure.
And thank you for doing this, and you've been great.
Thank you.